Welcome back to the DIY Homebuyer Podcast. I am your host, Nick, and today we are talking about the sexiest topic in real estate, estate planning. It's what everybody thinks about first and foremost when they're thinking about buying a home. And fortunately, we have a world-class expert, Oscar Vasquez of EstateDocPrep.com, who has been in the real estate industry for honestly about as long as I have been alive. And so he is going to be able to speak to this way, way better than I can. Oscar, man, thanks so much for joining me on the show. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, Nick, thank you. You know what? I just want to say thank you for allowing me to use your platform to bring awareness to the 68% of homeowners that do not protect themselves from the government making a decision on what happens to your home when they die. Believe that, 68%. Is that amazing?
Dude, it blows my mind. And I mean, I say it, of course, tongue in cheek about estate planning being the sexiest topic in real estate.
Yeah.
But you highlight exactly, I mean, nobody seems to really think about this or talk about this until it's too late, which is why I thought, man, this is so important for my audience to have you on to get people thinking about this up front, because so many people get excited about the home buying process, but then they close on the home, they get the keys, and then their realtor's gone. If they used one, the lender's gone, the home inspector's gone, and they're asking themselves, okay, now what? And that's what I really want for you to speak to kind of right off the bat. Like, what are some of the things that you see once homeowners get the keys and they're like, now what? What do I do? What are the mistakes they make? What do they need to do?
Well, I think that, you know what, here's the first thing. I always tell people, first of all, I want to educate you. I'll tell you now what. The first thing is you got to protect the home. And it's not getting insurance. It's protecting beyond the things that you can't control. Like if you get in an accident, you get incapacitated and things happen. And a living trust is one of those things that can only do that. But I'll tell you that. But what I want to start off with is I want you to educate because of estate planning. But before I go into that, since you were talking about age differences and gaps, I wanted you to understand this, that first-time home buyers today, do you know the statistic? I think the last statistic I read that the average home buyer was 28 years old. Do you know what they are now?
I think it's gotten older. I think it's closer to 33, 34 now.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was in a mastermind group and somebody said, no, man, it's 33. Where you been, Oscar? I said, obviously not working with buyers. Right. But I share that with you because this is what happens. I think that there's stages in our life, right? And when we're in our 30s, I have nephews that are 28, 29. They do well. They do a lot better. They make a lot more money than I did when I was 28, right? At least in my standards. And I said, why don't you settle down? They're like, why? Why? It's like a whole different concept. But I think they become, and when you say sexy, there are stages in your life. And if you start early enough, it's like a retirement account. It's like buying a home. The earlier you buy a home, the better cost per average that you're going to get on appreciation, the faster you buy it. 1. 2, the sooner you start to invest in your future by building a retirement account, the faster you're going to build wealth that becomes a residual income. The faster that you start protecting yourselves at a lower cost. I'll give you an example. 15 years ago when I first started, I'll give you a real quick background. I've been in the real estate industry for 28 years. We had one of the largest brokerage where we owned 25% of the homes in our market was sold by our company. And we did that by doing one thing, providing exceptional service, getting up earlier than everybody else, and doing the right activities, right? But I say that because when we're in stages in our life, we don't think that we're going to die at 28, 29,
Of course,
30. We don't start thinking about it till we're on our 40s. But 15 years ago, an estate plan or a living trust was $600. Today, it's $6,000, right? And you wait in 15 years from now. When you're 45 or you're 50, an estate plan is going to be $20,000.
Yeah.
So I always tell people that the best time, what happens now with a great question, now that you bought the house, the first thing you do is you set your family up to protect the one asset that cost you the most sacrifice. That's going to change your life, right? And when we're working with buyers, the first thing we say is, you remember those fancy dinners? Well, that's going to change a little bit because you're going to want a nicer house because you're going to want a home, right? Things change. And so one of the things you have to change, you have to mind shift it and be able to do that. So now that you're a homeowner, it's no longer, and we always say this jokingly, but it's a true story. When you start talking to the buyers, I always say, those weekends when you guys should go to the beach and ride bikes. Now the weekends are at Home Depot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because you're always looking at how do I improve my home or looking at those home gardening videos. When it comes to estate planning, though, it's understanding what an estate plan is and what is a living trust and what is the benefits. Because 68% of homeowners don't have an estate plan. It's not that they don't care about their kids, it's because they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And or if you've never seen it, right? You don't know. You don't know that it exists. But once you have the great life and you have the lifestyle now, once a homeowner, you will always be a homeowner because you will feel the difference of being a homeowner, of not just a proud home ownership, but you'll feel the freedom of being able to paint your walls pink if you wanted to.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
simple
right.
freedom of being able to sit there and decide is priceless, right? That MasterCard commercial, priceless. With a living trust, I want to give you a breakdown on what it does, and I'll give that to you because I don't want to take up too much of the time and talking
This is
about
good.
how important it is to be the homeowner. But an estate plan is a contract between the beneficiaries, no, the grantor or the trustee and the beneficiary. It's usually the mom or the parents and the kids that the courts help enforce. That's it. So an attorney does not have to draw it up. It just has to have the legal provisions. That helps you prevent taxes. If you pass away, what happens to your stuff? Well, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you some stories of what happens in California, and it happens. Now, I mean, I helped a client that their family in Indiana took 8 years to get the family home, and they thank God every day that grandma had it paid off, right? But so one of the first things that happens is the attorney shows up and tells your kids, "Hey, mom didn't have a living trust, but I can help you. You just have to pay 6 to 8% of the estate value." In California, the average house is 800,000. Call it $1 million. That's 60 to 80,000 that goes away. That means you work 30, 40 years to pay off the house. You pass away, didn't have a trust, and now your kids have to pay 80 grand.
Just poof, gone.
Gone. Because you didn't get a living trust to protect them. One. The second thing that happens in probate is that it becomes public record. And public record means that they publish it and they tell people, listen, so Oscar died and he left this house with this much equity. If you feel he owes you money, come forward. Two, if you feel you're should be a benefactor or inheritance factor of his, come forward, do the hearing, right?
Yeah.
Scam artists would come out often, and now the courts have been a little bit more discreet on giving out exact net worth, but it's still public record. If somebody wanted to go through and look at probate records, like in real estate, to this day, we buy probate records because those of us that work exclusively with listings, we call probate owners. We call them up and said, "Hey, you want to sell, mom? Hey, what are you going to do with this property? You know what? I am in Tennessee, and the property's going to go through probate. And what do you want to do with the stuff? I just get rid of it. I just send me a check, right? So that's the first thing, right? The second thing is, one, the attorney pays the fees. Two, it becomes public. Three, the court makes the final decision on what happens to your things. How about that? What about if the family, now you're like, I don't have any kids. Okay, great. How about your brothers, your siblings? You don't have anybody you love, right? Doesn't the beneficiaries don't have to be your kids. If you don't have any, or you decide not to have any, or if you've been blessed with other things, because my wife and I don't have any kids, but we were godparents to 4 kids, and now we've raised 4 kids,
Yeah.
right? And I gotta tell you, I mean, I don't know. My mother used to say that's a blessing. I don't know if that's true. No, just kidding. But no, it is a blessing. But sometimes they get older. You're like, man, this is. I was not that way. Anyhow, so then they after that happens. Now the court makes the final decision on what happens to your property. That means that's how people get accidentally disinherited, or
Mhm.
people get accidentally left out by the courts because they go to probate and they weren't there, they didn't get notified for whatever reason. The
Yeah.
third thing, the fourth thing that happens after the court decides on what happens to your things, it takes 18 to 24 months to settle your case. That means your beneficiaries, if they have to liquidate the house, like when we list property, we always do what's called an ex parte, which means, Judge, Your Honor, please give us permission to sell the house while you go through probate, because we don't have any money to pay for it.
Sure.
We don't have any money for mortgage payments, so we do what's called an ex parte. We get the house sold,
Hmm.
and then the money sits in the account for 12 to 18 months after the judge has made it all the decisions, just in case anybody that thinks you owe them money comes forward, right? And after that, you have to wait 12 to 18, 24 to 18 months. And then there's possible tax implications. At the end of the tax man has to get his share, right? At the end of the day. So we always tell people this, that, what's next, right? Now that you bought your house, what's next? And we always tell people, one is, first of all, we would recommend that you protect it, because if you bought your house 15 years ago and you didn't get a living trust today, if you used an attorney, it would be four to $6,000, $10,000 to get one. Unless you use a service that, like ours, that is an online service that makes comprehensive living trust affordable to the masses.
Yeah.
Unless you do that with us. And then there's also this lawyer.com or whatever, but those guys, they have a statistic. 95% of living trusts that get started online don't finish, don't get done. And that was an interesting statistic. And
Yeah. Why
that's
do you think
why,
that is?
well, it's because it's a complicated process. Like, Nick, let me ask you a question. If you had, do you have any kids?
I do. I got 3.
Okay. Do you have any boys, girl? I mean, obviously they're boys and girls, right?
Yeah. Boy, girl,
But
boy.
if they are they young kids? What age are they?
Yeah. The oldest is 10.
10. So I'll give you an example. Your 10-year-old grows up, and he's a boy, girl,
Boy. Yep.
boy. Okay, he grows up and he marries, right? You do well. You worked hard all your life, right? You put your pennies away. You saved in your retirement. You bought real estate, and then she goes up and she marries the good looking boyfriend that really don't like to show up to work, right? Right? You know what I'm talking about? Those
I
guys
do.
that
Yeah. The,
if
the,
they're
the
good
one that I
looking
fear.
boys, they have pretty eyebrows and they stand up straight, but they can't pick up a shovel, right? And then you have to make a decision of what happens to my stuff. So then you need to do a provision in your. One of the things is, if your daughter supersedes you and passes before you, where do you want your assets to go?
Hmm.
And then they have all these questions, right? Do you want it to go to charity? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that?
Mm.
And one of the questions we always drive straight into say, do you want your son-in-law to get it, or your daughter-in-law to get it, or do you want it to go to your grandkids? And if they don't have any grandkids, do you want your other kids to then share in the proceeds if your daughter's not here? And that is called the human element of delay, because that is a thought that never crossed your mind in your entire life, that your daughter has the possibility of leaving without you.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell most people, that when you think of these questions, you start to really start really, really to think about the things that you prepare for, and that you start appreciating them even
Yeah.
more, because a living trust is a living document that can be changed. And the longer you have your living trust, the more complex you make it. And what do I mean by that? Your living trust, the only limitations that your living trust has is based on the limitations of your imagination, of the instructions that you're willing to give your kids when you pass. You don't get all the money until you're 35 or 40. One, two, we work a lot with educators, and an educator said, Mrs. Sharon, I remember her. This was just recently, probably about a year and a half ago. Everything to me is recent, right? But it was about a year and a half ago. I guess you get to that age where things like dude, we're in March, man. I just remember having tamales.
I love it.
But with Sharon, I said, Miss Sharon, she goes, anything, Oscar? I said, anything. I said, well, my son, she said, my son, I want to make sure that my son takes a drug test. He was abusive of opioids about 5-6 years ago. He's been sober. He's now a Christian, but he always admits that he's still an addict that can fall at any time. And to prevent that, I want him to do a test 5 days before him getting his check. I want all my assets to be sitting in an account, and I want to be able to fund it every month. And I want to fund it, but I want to leave some for my grandkids. But he needs to test negative. If he tests positive, he skips that check. And I said, Miss Sharon, isn't that a little like being in control? And she says, Oscar, you told me I could do whatever I wanted. My money, and he's my son. If he will be sober, whether I'm dead or alive, if I can help it. And two, he's not gonna get intoxicated with my money. I said, okay.
Yeah.
Miss Sharon, that is a very point well taken.
Yeah. So you can really get, the sky is the limit in terms of the creativity. But that does answer the question as to like, okay, so if you're just trying to do that simply on like a generic lawyer.com, that can get very complex very quickly because you're having to think through these things that probably need some guidance and somebody to help you work through it.
And our estate planning coordinators, we're not attorneys, but we've done hundreds of these, and we've seen many people be very creative. But the point of it is this: that the younger that you do it, the more complex and the more things, and the longer the living trust will live, because you start thinking of things longer, because now that you own it, it's like this, right? You remember when you bought your first house, you thought of it for a long time, right? And that's the first part of taking action. It becomes a thought in your mind. The second part is taking action. The first thought is taking it. So once you start thinking of these things, and then you take action and you have the living trust, then you start thinking, hey, do I need to do a 529 for my daughter, for my kids? How are they going to go to school? What's going to happen? What about how are they going to start a business? What are they going to do? Right? I tell my kids, you know what? Mom, I always tell my mom, she said, what are you going to be when you grow up? I said, Mom, I'm going to be rich. She says, Mijo, you're already wealthy. You're not rich. And I said, because we're farm laborers. All my friends had all the nice toys. I didn't have them, and I always tell him, why is that? And he said, you know what? Because God gave you things that He didn't give all them kids. I said, well, where are they at? Because I ain't seen them.
Right?
What happened to all them things? But it was what she was saying is she gave us work ethic, and God gave us those are the things that we do. Work ethic and being honest and being trustworthy. Those are gifts to being able to not make sure the mighty dollar don't get you, right? But back to the trust, it's important that you create your trust, and the longer that you have it, the more things you start to add on, because you're thinking of it. It's conscious, it's top of mind. And then here's the best part: an attorney charges $12,000 to create it's called a restatement. With our software, you have unlimited restatements, unlimited restatements. And what does that mean? Unlimited restatements. That means that you can make as many changes as you want, as often as you want. All you got to do is sign them in front of a notary and two witnesses, because it's not like an addendum or amendment like on real estate contracts.
Yeah.
It goes on top of each other. Like the living trust generated June 1st, 2020. Now it's March 30th, 2025. It goes on top and it says the provisions on this now I name my grandchild as part of my trust. That, I've been to a few readings, and I'm going to tell you, those small gifts that you give, they go like it's priceless stuff. I
Go a
mean,
long way.
and maybe because I'm 53. I tell my wife, I think I'm just more emotional now.
Yeah, well, I think as you get older, you do come to a greater appreciation of those things, and some of it too is just like the legacy that you're leaving behind,
Yeah,
the memories of
and people are
yourself.
like, "But I'm just a homeowner." Here's what I always tell people: if you own a home in America, you are on the top 2% of the world,
Yeah,
right? If you ain't cold and you ain't hungry, you got a lot to be grateful for,
yeah,
right?
100%, man,
You know,
100%.
but I that's just my mindset with that. So as far as living trust, what do you do next? What now? I always tell to people this: look, the first thing is, one, your life's about your when you become a homeowner, your life's changing. You are no longer going to be that person that was going to be a homeowner. You are now going to transform into a different person. And every time I see my buyers or with that, we always say, "Hey, how you doing?" I say, "Let me. Have you noticed any changes?" He goes, "Oh yeah, a lot,
Yeah,
right? A
all the
lot of
people at Home Depot know me by name now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Now you're doing a lot of stuff, but I think it's all part of the transformation of being an adult and being a family man and being and having a partner that you're sharing dreams with, and that is the value. Now you see, a home is not an investment. A home is where you build memories, and hopefully from those memories you're blessed to be able to have little bambinos or little ones to be able to share even more memories with, because those are true blessings, right? And that's priceless. So that's where it goes from there. I think it's all about protection. It's protection of the home from not letting the government decide on what happens to your things when you die.
And I think that is so huge. Like, I can't put a big enough of an exclamation point upon that, because it's a way of looking out for your loved ones and the people that you care about most, because it really does create a nightmare for them if you are to pass and you don't have these things in place, because of the way that it ties up the money, the stress that it puts upon family members in
Yeah.
case there are debtors or other people that come forward and try and make claim. And now they're having to battle all of that over 2 years or more in the probate process. It can feel like a roll of the dice as to what the government's going to do, what the judge is going to do, the taxes. And to just think that all of that could be avoided up front by just taking the little bit of extra effort to put into place that living trust.
Yes, and the sad thing is that most of our profession, most of the real estate professionals, we know, but we don't know because we don't bring enough awareness to it. And when you start seeing, 15 years into the business, I started to work a lot more with sellers because it was just an easier transition for me, because all my buyers were becoming sellers and they were just moving up, and some of them were passing away. And when their family members would come and say, "Mom passed away, Oscar, and now the attorney wants us to sell the house. This is where we live. What do we do?" Right?
Mhm.
Because in our culture, there's a lot of us, right? I mean, my mom bought a house. It was a 1-bedroom house, and there was 5 kids. I mean, it's like when I see that house, we still own it to this day. But I mean, I own it as my brothers and sisters. But
Yeah.
when we see that house, we always go, "Wow, how do we fit in this
How
damn
do we
thing?"
do that? Yeah.
You know what I mean? How did mom do it with $100 a week? I mean, Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But that's the same thing where you're going to be at. So I think that there is no better time than to do it. When you are a homeowner, it's taking the first step. You should prepare for it. And that is probably right next to changing the curtains, right next to changing the curtains and painting the house and getting it there. That needs to be right up on that list
Yeah.
because God forbid something, I don't mean to get religious, but if something happens to you, your number comes up, and we have a saying in Mexico. It says, if it's your time, even if you get out of the way, you're going.
Hmm.
And if it's not your time, even if you get in the way, you're not going. Right? When it's your time, it's your time. And we don't know when that is. Um, and so I always tell people you got to prepare for it. And those are the things that happen. And now that you've heard this podcast, I could just share this with you that now you know you can't unknow. And
Yeah.
now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And now you can't be a part of that 68%. Say I'm that 68% that I'm ignorant. I didn't know. Now you know. So now you're there by choice.
Yeah, I was going to say, when coming back to that 68% statistic, I have to imagine that most of that is just ignorance, where people are just unaware, or that they keep putting it off because they're like, kind of what you were saying earlier, they don't think that my number could be up next.
Yeah.
And so they're like, I got time to get to that. And life is always busy. There's always a number of competing priorities. But this is one of those big ones where it's like, no, you can't keep putting this off, because there really could come a moment where it is truly too late.
Yeah, and I think that what most people think, that I mean, we're Hispanics are very very popular for tomorrow, mañana, right? Everything,
Mm-hmm.
but you know what? Unfortunately, I've had probably this last year. Sometimes I always joke with my wife. I go, God, man, I'm bad luck. I got all my clients, and then my wife always says, No, you just sold too many houses because too many of those people. I mean, we go to funerals almost. It feels like almost all the time. And then she goes, and not just that, but you notice it now because you're older and you're actually in the moment. Before I was always on the phone, but now we're there. But those things happen, and all I could tell you, a comprehensive living trust comes with 19 total documents. If and not you don't not everybody needs them. Our our estate planning software has that document. All of those documents, if you need them. I'll give you an example of one document that's absolutely a must if you have a special needs child. If you have a special needs child and you're not a homeowner, you need a living trust, and you need a living trust because the state, if you leave them any type of asset, the state will take away their benefits, use the little bit you gave them, or just take it and give them whatever's left over. And that's not fair to the child because they got given a gift, and people are going to take advantage of them. If you don't have a special needs trust, they can be. With the special needs trust, it protects them. It protects them, not only, not saying that the government, I'm not trying to get political, but it's the association, or all these things happen with those things. That's one of them. I mean, another one that we've done a lot of is special needs trust, and then a sub trust, because there's sub trust, is a firearms transfer. That is a trust.
Yeah.
That has been very popular because we're getting a lot of people that, out in we live in the suburbs of Los Angeles. So we have a lot of hills, we have a lot of hunters, and we have a lot of recreational and all that out here. So
Yeah.
we're starting to get some gun trusts, and that exists. There's about 19 different documents. Some of the most important ones are the documents that include, for example, a HIPAA waiver. That means if you become incapacitated, and I want to tell you, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not a homeowner, or you are a homeowner, but you have an 18-year-old son, a 19-year-old son, daughter, you need to get these two documents immediately. Download them, get them, do whatever you got to do, protect your family. Because now that you're not your child, right? And I used to always kid with my mom. I said, Mom, I'm like 32. She goes, I don't care. You will always be my son, and you always gonna sit down and eat when I ask you to eat. Okay, Mom. But they're 19 years old, but if something were to happen to them, they know they now have what's called a HIPAA Privacy Act for them. And that means that those documents won't get released to you. They're medical records. And they show up in capacity, but if you have your kids sign those in advance, you
Then
have
as a
those
parent, you can
because
continue to.
they're not minors anymore. They got to relinquish those rights.
Yeah, yeah.
And you as parents, and I say that because I mean some of those and I got this like 5 years ago. I had one of my one of my clients, Miss Shirley, gave. That's what she gave. She goes, can you fix this software? And I said, why? She goes, I'm gonna give all my grandchildren. I'm gonna give all my grandchildren if something happens to my kids, I want all my grandkids to just come with me, and I'm gonna give that to them for Christmas. So she gave them guardianship rights that she wanted them to sign, and then she gave them HIPAA waivers so that way she could take care of them. She goes, as long as I'm okay. I mean, she's still there, but I laugh, but it's the thought that she said, you know what, I can take care of all these people.
It's
You know what I
really good
mean?
foresight. Yeah,
That's like,
yeah,
that's right. I mean, to me, I mean, we can laugh about it, but if you
yeah.
think about that, she's going, man, this lady, she like, no, and she's a whippersnapper. She remembers everything, man.
Yeah.
And, Oscar, you said you're going to be here at 3:30. It's 4:00. Where are you?
Where are you, man?
I mean, I said, hey, look, I'm always running a little bit late. I'm always $1 short and a minute late. So, but it's a joke. But no,
No, this is so good, man. I really appreciate the insights here. And it's
yeah,
just so valuable for my listeners and audience to really think about. Of just, yeah, this is something that we have to have dialed in. It is such an important way to love the people that we care about most in our life. And going back to like the sexiness of it, like, yeah, it's not fun or pleasant, or it's never like top of mind to think about these heavy kind of issues and decisions, but the kind of relief and peace that you give to your family, loved ones, after you pass by having all this stuff in place,
it's priceless, man.
they're just so incredibly grateful.
Even your siblings, man, your siblings get. I've been at these things, and where I've been asked to go to a reading because what happens is one part of the instruction manual that we give is to the executors. We give them an instruction manual that tells them these are the things that you need to do. Step one, right? Step one, get all the death certificates, do this, make copies, give them all to all your siblings, everybody that's named in the trust. Make sure they get copies and they do that. And you could see some of the emotion where people, just the simple fact that they got a copy of the trust is such an emotional, like, wow, she thought of me. Like my name was on there. Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure,
it can get deep, man. But, and that's, nobody wants to talk about that because it's end of life. But there's two things that are guaranteed that's going to happen in life. Two things. One, we're all going to pay taxes. It's just a matter of what share. And the second is we're all going to pass,
Yeah. Yeah.
We laugh about it, but my wife always goes, why are you always joking? I said, because here's the thing. I love what I do. I enjoy it. And I'm going to tell you, if I can't laugh with the people that I work with, then I'm never going to laugh because I'm always working.
Right.
I got to enjoy it. So that's who I am, though. Transparency.
I love it, man. Well, as we wrap up here, like I want for listeners, you should have if you don't have an estate plan and if you don't have a living trust in place, like I want you to have a fire under your ass to get it done. And so, Oscar, with the service that you've built, what would you recommend for folks like today that they go and do to make sure these things are in
if
place?
you're a homeowner today, I recommend that you start off by getting the Comprehensive Living Trust Estate Guide. Because that's going to eliminate 95% of all the human element of delay. Now, just because you can fill out that guide doesn't mean you have a trust. So full disclosure, that is not a trust, even though it has most of the questions that create the human delay. One, so you can download that at estate.prep.com/guide. The second thing that we do is we use in our real estate and our estate planning business, we use a lot of artificial intelligence, and we have a 24-hour receptionist. I don't remember that I just got it updated, but we have a 24-hour receptionist, and she doesn't take breaks. She takes all the incoming calls. She doesn't sell, but she will at the end ask you to book a call if you wanted to, or she'll ask you to speak to a human. And it's 805-909-4689. That's 805-909-4689. I'll send those to you to the notes. And the last thing I want to give you, the first 10 home buyers that buy a home and they want an estate plan, I'll give you guys a discount code, and we're going to call it buyers. That'll be the discount code. It'll be buyers, and you'll get $1,000 off the lifetime value, and you'll buy it for $1,495. It's an absolute gift. I'm going to tell you. If you know somebody, give it to them. And I always tell people this, and if you have kids and they're old enough, then if you can't afford it, then they're going to be the true beneficiaries, because they're your loved ones. We won't be here, but you'll be able to do it. There's a lot more that we have, and I wish we had more time, but I could sit here, as you could tell, I'm very passionate about estate planning. And I mean, it's one of many things that we do, but I'm very passionate about it because I've seen so many lives be changed. And, I got to tell you, the biggest gratification is when somebody uses the documents and they call you and just say, you know what, I just used that document. I want to just say thank you. I want to just say thank you for convincing us. I said, no, man, I just give you the facts. You make good decisions, right? Yeah. That's what we do. So, but that's been a great blessing.
Thanks, man. That is such a gift to listeners. So listeners, do check out the links in the show notes here. Do get your estate plan set up. And Oscar, I mean, I know that there's so much more that we could get into, which means that we're going to have to two-part this and have you back.
Let's make it some fun. Maybe we'll brainstorm and we'll create something that'll create a ton of value for one of your for your listeners, and we'll do that because, like I said, real estate is my passion too. I've been. My wife says, I don't know why you do so many other things. It's like, because I'm so good at real estate, I got all this extra time. What else do I do?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Come back to what you know and what you love.
Yeah, and I do that, and it's awesome. So, but that said, Nick, thank you very much once again. I'm gonna leave you with some last words of wisdom. Tomorrow's not promised. Yesterday's too late. The only day that you have for sure is right now. Take action, make it happen.
Good word. Guys. Good word. Thanks so much, Oscar. Appreciate you, man. Listeners, do check out those notes and connect with Oscar, get that estate plan set up. Appreciate y'all.